Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase live stream, and it's apparently another cold open day because, oh, people, we've been doing things since last we talked. All right, so while we're doing this, I'm going to do my best to resurrect my hyper deck, which apparently decided that I don't feel like playing today. And that's the thing that is responsible for queuing up all the videos. So if we don't get that back online, then there won't be any video from Comic-Con. You'll have to just put up with pictures. Anyway, hi. Welcome to, once again, the best produced show on the entire interwebs. I am your host, Pete Bickford, and this is the ComicBase live stream. And I'm going to see if I can actually now hide the not auto-hiding credit I've got going on there, because this is going beautifully. And we'll take it from there. All right, back again. All right, so since last we talked, all right, so first of all, why the heck should you be listening? This is a show all about all things comic-based, comic-related, and so forth. I am the long-suffering creator of ComicBase, and what I do is well, in the last couple weeks is I fix weird technical problems and I travel to airports where nothing's happening. And I just got back from Comic-Con and everything is in complete chaos, as you can tell. One of the things that's adding to the special fun of this week is right before I had to leave for the show, I was dealing with a blue screen on my main development machine, and it about 3 in the afternoon, I just said, I've had it. I can't deal with it one more time. We've replaced all the drivers. We've reset the system. We've done all the things that people should do. We've swapped RAM, and the only thing for it apparently is to reset Windows, which actually worked beautifully. I spent way less time resetting Windows than I did playing around trying to fix corrupted print drivers or whatever the heck was going on with my machine, which has been getting steadily worse for the last several weeks. It just got to the point where I couldn't get work done. So the actual resetting of Windows was a piece of cake. A couple of hours, I was back, I was booted, and I was like doing work, some stuff. Unfortunately, when you do that, the thing you miss is all your preference settings for every program you've ever used, which goes for everything from the microphone settings for what we're doing now with StreamYard to every tweaky bit inside every video program you've ever done, so forth. And so, of course, until you've field tested every last bit of it, nothing works the way it's supposed to do. And that's probably what was going wrong to start with, is some preference and something that got called by the system was just going wonky. And so, it would it started out every 2 weeks and then every couple days and then twice a day, lead to different blue screens for me. Anyway, good news, system's working like a champ now. Everything's good, but I will probably be another 2 weeks before I'm can start any particular thing on my computer and have it go the way I remembered it going, including things like the video cues for the show. So anyway, that's what we're doing here. So on this show, other than randomly whining about my computer problems, we're going to talk a little bit about Comic-Con. It was an eventful show, made much more eventful by the processes that were happening in the world of technology getting there. I also want to show a little bit about some fairly big tech developments that have been happening in the world of security, unfortunately, and none of them are good. And then a little bit of news about ComicBase itself. So to take those from the top, I was engaged on a long planned trip to go out to California. From my native, Franklin, Tennessee, over here, traveling back to the San Diego area where my wife Carolyn is from. And we were going to attend her 40th high school reunion. I've never been to a high school reunion. I was there as her certified arm candy, and I'm just there to try to make her look good, and just laugh at everyone's jokes, and and make it look like the last 40 years since high school have not been a failure for her, which I think is the whole point of every high school reunion, is to either meet up with people you haven't seen for a long time, or to show up people that have were mean to you in high school and probably just forgot who the heck you are by now, but at the very least to let them feel that you've had a life. So anyway, that's at least how I interpreted my brief. So that's what we were attempting to do. The night before we were going to go on the whole thing, unfortunately I'm resetting computers and doing crazy things like that. But come 9 o'clock at night. We have a 4 a.m. flight, that we're facing. It was time to kind of knock off whatever the heck I was doing, and get some kind of sleep so that I could get going. Of course, me being me, I decided, well, I can't just go to bed at 9. I never go to bed at 9, so I'm going to build a shelving unit in one of these flat pack things that holds DVDs. I'm going to build that in my living room. I figure I'll throw on the Xbox, play Pandora, and we'll listen to some tunes as I'm assembling flat pack furniture. And the first sign that something was going to go wrong for me was that I turned on the Xbox. The Xbox did not turn on. Well, I mean, it turned on, but it said, yeah, I can't connect to the servers. And it's like, well, that's weird. Check the internet, check everything else like that. And eventually, after half an hour, we're like, let's check there's a site called Down Detector, which is a site on the internet for just telling you whether big services are down or not. And Down Detector said, yeah, there's a problem with Microsoft's Azure services, and no one can log into Xboxes around the globe tonight. So it's like, okay, fine, can't stream Pandora, whatever. And then I just figured out, I'll putz around with this shelving unit, get this assembled, have it good to go. Unfortunately, part C of the shelving unit apparently had been machined backwards, so that was an impossible thing. So having gotten the entire thing half assembled, I belatedly had to put it all back into its original box, take everything, deassemble everything else, go to Amazon and tell them, yeah, you've sent me an impossible shelving unit. It cannot be assembled as such because someone reversed a part. And send that back. By the way, should this ever happen to you, should you ever need to send back pre-assembled furniture to Amazon, which in all my years on this planet I have never had to do, it turns out there's a rather elaborate process to it, which does involve putting it back into original packaging. So don't be one of those guys who rips the box to shreds and so forth, because then you will not be returning it. But the other thing about it is Amazon, quite smartly, will say, yeah, sure, you didn't want to just maybe keep it, and we'll give you like a $22 credit on your $130 shelving unit, which I'm like, no, this thing, it isn't like the thing's a little scuffed or a little dented or something like that. No, it's just, it cannot be put together. Anyway, but that's a thing. So helpful hints if you ever order furniture off the internet, save the original packaging. So eventually around 11 o'clock at night, I said, okay, heck with it. Just nothing's working right. I'm going to bed. I got to try to get some sleep. Get up at 4 a.m. We had to catch a flight, right? And Xbox is still down. Computer's still down. We thought, let's check our flights. And that's when the fun really started in earnest, because you guys might have heard of a little service called CrowdStrike, because this was the 19th. And a company called CrowdStrike, which is a security company. It's used by pretty much all the bigs, most of the Fortune 500. It's actually practically required by law at this point that you either are using CrowdStrike or something just as good as CrowdStrike by a lot of the regulatory authorities of banks, medical offices, and so forth, and particularly airlines. Well, CrowdStrike had a little problem that night. It started out in Australia, where their service is to detect in real time. They have a service called a software called Falcon, which was again installed by all the bigs, and they pushed out a system update. The update was meant to catch in real time attack vectors, things that seem fishy on the thing, and it could shut it down in real time. And to do this, they released things called channel files. They're kind of like virus definitions, and unfortunately, these things they're installed at a very deep level of the Microsoft operating system. If on Microsoft, they run at what's called the kernel level. It's where drivers, reside and so forth. The things that allow your monitor to be a monitor, your disk drive to be a disk drive. They all get loaded into this very protected space in the operating system. And it's the kind of thing that if anything goes wrong there, very, very bad things happen. Matter of fact, it's so bad that the decision, if something goes wrong at the driver level, typically you'll get what's called the blue screen of death, which is the thing that says something went wrong. Here's a cryptic error message. It's a lot like the thing that I was getting a couple nights ago when some unspecified thing on my Windows system had gotten corrupted, and I was having trouble. But anyway, the channel file that these guys sent down in CrowdStrike, I believe was number 296. They had a little problem with their QA. Basically, as far as anyone can tell, they sent a definition file filled with zeros. And the way that the program works for CrowdStrike is it was making jumps in memory to standard locations, from the channel file, and then offset by a certain amount of space to get to different variables in memory. And so what it was doing is just trying to jump into the 0th position in your memory plus a couple of bytes that weren't there. And so basically, it was memory you didn't have, and nobody had, nobody at all. So as soon as your computer downloaded this top priority channel 96 file from CrowdStrike, and as soon as it restarted, it would immediately memory fault in the kernel and blue screen. And it did this, and it started out around Australia, and it rolled around, hour by hour, all the way through the globe. Up until the point where it's 4 o'clock in the morning over in Tennessee. We're checking out flights, and nothing is happening because the Delta app is down. They're canceling flights by the jillions. You say, well, can we talk to an operator? And they said the time required to get an operator on the phone is 6.5 hours, and so forth. And at this point, it was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And so you're looking at it as they're canceling. You eventually can find a site where they can show your flights, and you see that they've canceled your flight, but they've rebooked you on a later flight. And they've canceled that flight, and they've rebooked you on a different flight for that. At one point, they had us arriving after the actual reunion, and then they canceled that flight, and then they put us back on something else. It was just absolute madness. And of course, at this point, I'm completely sleep deprived, and at that point, I'm just like, oh, to hell with it. I'm going to bed. I'm going to catch a couple hours of Z's just before we try to cope with this insanity. Wake up, and things are still in hell, but we think we've got a flight out that afternoon sometime. Remember, I was supposed to be on a plane at like 5:30 in the morning. And at that point, things are not certain whatsoever. We figured, yeah, we'll go to the mall, right? We get some time to kill all of a sudden, right? We'd cleared the day. Go to the mall, and I'm trying to find a suit jacket because I still haven't lost all the COVID weight, and so my old one's fitting a little funny. And again, I'm the eye candy for the reunion. I gotta look good, right? So we're at the mall, and okay, fine, find a suit jacket, and they can't check us out because all the registers are down. I mean, at this point, it's clear that this is not a Delta thing. It's not a Microsoft thing. This is like a really bad thing that has hit everybody. So eventually, we do get to it. Time for our flight. We catch a lift. I've had to cancel my Turo reservation. If you guys know what Turo is like Airbnb for cars. And I would normally say, man, oh man, if you ever have a chance to Turo a car as opposed to renting it from the rental office, absolutely the way to go. I did it on several trips before, and for the same price, you're renting like some piece of crap Kia or something like that. You can typically get like a Ford Mustang convertible, from a nice person who treated it with kid gloves, and it was just beautiful and so forth. Unfortunately, the Turo Mustang rental I had set up for San Diego, where I was going to be paying like $28 a day for a 2020 Mustang, Joyce's Mustang, the same one I rented last year. At some point it became clear that it's a person's private car. I can't just show up in the morning, 3 a.m. and say, hi, can I have the car? It became clear I was not going to be able to meet the original thing. I had to cancel that rental and say, look, if I ever make it out there, I'll have to make other arrangements, pay the cancel fee, and so forth. And so we're heading out eventually. No we don't know when we're going to show up. There's a connecting flight through Minneapolis now. It was going through Atlanta originally. We're wondering if we're ever getting out of Minneapolis. As it turned out, we were right to wonder. Anyway, but we get to the airport, and the airport looks like this. And the blue screens of death are everywhere. They are literally on, as you go from airport to airport, it's just the same story everywhere you go. By the way, it turns out if your system updated this, downloaded this channel file and was had it going, it turns out that not only did it wasn't like you just roll back the update. That'd be far too simple. No, typically. Well, first of all, what this thing would do is it would hard crash the machine. So you had to go to each machine in turn and do the recovery. Mostly, if you could get to it, if you could boot into safe mode and delete channel file 296 from your system directory and restart the machine, you would be okay. Except if you had BitLocker turned on. And BitLocker, of course, is the industry standard Microsoft technology for encrypting drives. which, if you're in a nice corporate environment, you want all your data to be secure. Guess what percentage of people were using BitLocker? I'm guessing it's pretty damn high, because what I saw in airport after airport, terminal after terminal, is we're wandering like the damned on this day. Is service dudes poking at ceiling tiles, trying to find where the cables go and where the hidden computer is that ran the thing, armed with sheets full of BitLocker recovery codes, which are, if you guys ever set up your drive for BitLocker, it print out a little text file with a whole bunch of very long numbers in it, and nice orderly columns, which you had to use one of these codes in order to ever recover your drive if it ever crashed. And if you're like most people, you did the normal thing is you said, well, this seems rather important. I should save this someplace very safe, like, I don't know, my documents folder on my now crashed drive, which does not make any sense when you think about it, but who was really thinking about it? So anyway, but yeah, absolute fiasco. The night largely ended in Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, where for hours and hours we were wondering very much whether the flight would ever arrive to get us to San Diego. They kept on announcing, we're working on it. It'll be real close now. We just need to get a crew. And at that point, having waited hours after the original departure time, and it's approaching midnight, and you're seeing people around the airport now with they've got mattresses out. It's again, it is like the full-on third world here. It's everywhere you go. And the airport had actually arranged at some point to find, like, it looked like gymnastics workout mats, and people were just crashed out everywhere, children sleeping everywhere, just so forth. But the problem they were having at that point of the evening, and this thing had been going on since at least like midnight, of the previous day for everyone, is they couldn't get ground crews to show up because, of course, no one was where they should be. But beyond that is their scheduling system for the ground crews. There's FAA regulations which say you can't be flying a crew for more than X number of hours in a 24-hour shift. And so they were trying to find people who were stationed anywhere near the Minneapolis airport that they could give probably hundreds of dollars worth of incentives to drive to Minneapolis St. Paul Airport to take an overnight flight, who weren't already clocked out, because no one could check the scheduling system to find out if they were available or not, because guess what else was down? Yes, the same thing. So anyway, this was the whole deal. We eventually got to the plane eventually left a bit before midnight. I got into San Diego. You're flying with time zones at that point, so we arrived at like 2 a.m, and then we got to the rental car. I'd made a rental car, during our long delay in Minneapolis. I'd made other reservations with Avis, which they promptly then blew off the second I got to the rental car counter at San Diego Airport. They're like, "Yeah, we're the only counter open. There's budget over there, but that car you reserved, yeah, we don't have it. Well, what do you got?" The only thing we got now is an electric. Now I'm thinking, oh, joy, this is going well. Electric car, you say? And now I want to be candid about my feelings on electric cars. I think they're interesting. I got to drive in a buddy's Tesla S model a long time ago. And if you take that thing out on a clear stretch of highway and you just floor it, because of the way the direct drive motor works, and it's not like you spin up the cylinders of a gas engine a little faster. No, it's like when you say go, that thing just goes. You practically gray out. The acceleration, the 0 to 60, is insane. It's like 3 seconds from a stop. And if you start at like 20 miles or 30 miles an hour, when you start to just floor it for a few seconds, you practically gray out. I mean, it's like being an Air Force pilot. That part is cool as hell. There's certain range issues. If you live in a big city and where you can charge every night, well, that's one situation. But if you're living a place like Tennessee, where, hey, I might want to drive down to Destin, you have to plan to find charging spots all the way down, and maybe it's not so much for me. So I do not own an electric car myself, but I'm sitting there thinking, well, there's some cool things. People have made a lot of improvements. It'll probably be pretty neat, but I just didn't want one as a rental, because I'm thinking, I have to cope with all the charging crap, right? Where do I charge? And it's going to be trouble getting the thing back and whatever else. And they said, well, yeah, it's we only have electric. It's that or nothing. And so I'm looking over, and there's a huge line over the budget thing. And my wife's asking me, "Well, come on, are we getting a car or not?" And because at that point it's 2 a.m. We've been basically at this since 4 a.m. And we're just trying to get to a place where we can sleep. I mean, that's we just want to sleep before the reunion and just have it done with. And and so I'm looking over at the big line of budget, and I say, well, I'm thinking right now maybe I want to go in that line because and then the guy at the car rental thing just said, yeah, Avis budget, same company, same cars. They don't have anything either. And so I'm like, crap. Okay, give me the electric. So we got the electric, and then for a minute I thought things got better, because I looked at the thing and it says, oh, it's a Mustang, electric Mustang. Well, okay, well maybe this will be cool after all. I mean, we'll have some charging food, but how bad could it be? But Mustang, so we pick up the car, and if you guys have driven a Mustang and if you've driven an electric Mustang, I'm here to tell you they are not the same car. It has, I guess, has the same name, but one of them is a cool sports car, and the other one's kind of like an electric SUV. It is not the same beast whatsoever. It still has that cool, electric acceleration, but then an electric Kia has that same electric acceleration, which is a real thrill for the 4 seconds in your life you're going to be able to use it. Because again, it requires an open stretch of highway, and it takes all of 4 seconds to go from 0 to 60. So again, for the 4 seconds you're doing that, it's really cool. The rest of it, you're just driving a car. And it's a really kind of dorked out geekazoid car with, they had Tesla envy. So, how Teslas have like the iPads for their control thing. Well, the Ford engineers did that and said, well, we'll make an even bigger iPad, and we'll have even less buttons, and we'll make everything so it's 4 menus deep inside the iPad control, which is ludicrously overlit for 2 a.m. in the morning. So you've got this massive glare in your face from the iPad, a tiny fraction of which is the GPS to tell you where the hell to go. You're trying to find out where the radio is. You can't. Oh man, we were just so over it. When we got into our Airbnb at 4 a.m, it was like, so it's solid 24 hours, probably a couple hours more due to the time zones just to get into San Diego. And it was just like, it was the most delightful run of travel that I've ever had. But anyway, kudos to everyone who was working through this whole thing. It was a real trial for everyone involved, and pretty much everyone kept their cool. Anyway, that's my big whiny travel story of how I got there. We got to the Comic-Con bit here in a bit. I need to get that out of the way. I want to say hi to everyone here. Mike B, Jet City Comics is first in the house here. Mike Beam greetings from Vancouver, 80 degrees under sunny skies, very nice. Looks like you picked up the big Absolute Superman. Sweet. Steamy Minneapolis out there, 90 with a nasty dew point of 69 from Oro Viejo, who's also pissed off that I did not, call him at 11:30 at night to say, hey, if you're still around the Minneapolis airport and you want to swing by, I'll buy you a beer. Yeah, no, sorry about that, man. But I guess I still owe you one if we ever catch up. Greg Hector, our mod, is in the house here out in South Jersey. Richard Scott is in the house, and let's see here what else is new. Greg Sandoval from is saying hi. Fabian Brandrisha from Belgium, nice, welcome, man. Ed from Canada is here. Brian from LCS is here. Steve Dazinger says, "What I didn't understand about the software fiasco is why it wasn't installed on a test system before going to production system." Yeah, you might wonder. Thank you for asking the obvious question. The story we've heard from CrowdStrike so far, which, by the way, I was hearing estimates at 10 a.m. that morning that they thought it had caused something like $20 billion in damages already to the world economy. I've heard different estimates of only $10 billion out here, but oh my God, if you were the poor schmuck who made that happen, you had a bad day. I honestly, the CrowdStrike guys have been they've been as closed-lipped as they're probably allowed to be about the exact process of how it got out into the world, without some kind of sanity checking. I've heard conflicting stories as to whether the update was staged with all zeros, like it was just a staging issue, like something went wrong with like the file copy or something, or whether it was something else. But it was, I mean, the second you touched it, was an instant blue screen. And the funny thing is, they said, "Oh yeah, we found the problem within an hour or so. We put a new patch out." But that doesn't explain also how then hour by hour, as the world woke up, this thing went around the world and blew everything up. I mean, this thing was, at least for a dozen hours or so, this thing was in full effect, of just shutting down everything on the planet. So yeah, they did not. I mean, I'm sure that they launched a new version fairly quickly. By the time I got into Minneapolis, you're able to read some stories about this one. And the Wi-Fi in the plane worked out okay. So of course everyone's it was techie at all, is trying to read up on what the hell happened. Um, the Tom's Hardware, great place to go for this sort of thing. But actually, I think the people who had it best is a site called Bleeping Computer, which is it's a hardcore geek site, more or less dedicated to system software failures and system errors. But they had the best angle on it at the time. I've heard a little bit more since. Basically, the CrowdStrike guys were blaming their QA process. I don't know. It's from I clearly don't have a complete model of their system release schedule, because the stories I've been told don't make any sense to me. So I hope something comes out in the end. They rather parrot. I don't know if this. I think this is more salt in the wound kind of thing. About 24 hours after this was all started happening, and every IT department in the Fortune 500 started losing all the sleep there was to lose. I was a relatively well, rested person compared to anyone at the Fortune 500. By the way, the first thing I did when I found out this was going on is I checked our servers. Our servers were fine. We don't use CrowdStrike anyway. But compared to all the IT departments for everybody else there, I mean, again, imagine you have to manually reset what is now thought to be 8.5 million computers, in order to make this thing right again. And then you have to deal with the effect of all the downside. I mean, Delta, for instance, canceled over 1,000 flights the first day. They were canceling 1,000 flights the next day as well. And because once you cancel a flight and you put people and you're shoving them on someplace else and you're scrambling all the resources to get extra crews and whatever else, nothing is where it should be. And they try to run these flights as tight as hell to start with. It's not like you guys have ever taken a flight out recently that was only had 5 people on it. So I mean, when you're shoving just tens and hundreds of thousands of people down the queue, it screws things up for a good long ways. I'll give you an idea of this one. After the reunion was over, and it was lovely, actually. It turns out my wife went to school with a bunch of very nice people. Or at least all the people who showed up at the reunion were very nice. But we had additional woes with with rental cars and electric cars and things like that. Which, by the way, if you'd like to read all about this whole thing in excruciating detail, check out substack.daftmusings.com or daftmusings.substack.com. I'll put the link in the description. It's my wife's Substack. She recorded the woes at great extent, as well as our how 20 hours with an electric Ford Mustang took me from an electric car tentative enthusiast to a guy honestly, I'm like, burn it down, destroy it with fire. I mean, that's by the end of 20 hours with this beast. I wanted the whole concept of the electric Mustang to be dead. It was so much worse than I ever could have dreamed. But which, by the way, is not helpful with all you Tesla owners out there who say, "Oh, I got a Tesla and I just plug it in at night when I go, and I'm all charged up in the morning. It's all great." I'm really happy for you, man. I really am. But that was not my rental situation, as long as we're clear. But anyway, sorry, I'm shaking my desk. Let me angle my camera back here. But I'll try to put a link to her Substack in the link here, because I do got to get onto Comic-Con type related news. But anyway, so we had obviously horrible times getting out. We had horrible times with our rental, with our Mustang. We tried to swap it. I got another Turo. Again, Turo normally the best thing ever. The guy swapped it for because I had to pick it up at midnight, because my original rental for the car started at like 3 in the morning. So the swap off was not exactly the congenial time. I wound up being in a parking lot behind a CVS, which, as it turns out, by the way, if you guys haven't been to California lately, CVS, as far as I can tell, is no longer actually a store. CVS is it was once a grocery store, not sorry, a grocery store, but it was once a pharmacy chain, kind of like Walmart. As far as I can tell, based on two Turo rentals and everything else that I've seen in the LA and San Diego areas, it's an empty store, which consists of a couple of soft drinks left over, row and row and row of looted out shelves because everyone shoplifted everything in sight. Vast parking lots which are used exclusively for other businesses. Specifically, the outsides of the CVS are used as Tesla charging station farms, and the middle of the things are secretly being used as Turo rental car exchange lots. Because every Turo that I was asked to, either drop off or return at in the San Diego and Los Angeles area was inevitably in the middle of the lot of a CVS. So go figure. But yeah, so as far as I could tell, I went into one CVS and I was like, hi, where's all the stuff? Luckily, they did have the Diet Coke I was looking for because we're dying in the heat, but it was like all the shelves were just cleared out. And they're like, well, we're a little low. The truck will be coming later this week. And I'm thinking, the truck? The deliver everything truck? Because you have a vast empty store here. Everything's clearly been cleared out. And by the way, part of where it had been cleared out to, we found out as we're walking behind our Airbnb in LA. We found one day, it was just a lovely idyllic walk through an unbelievably nice LA neighborhood. I was like, well, I'm going to take back everything mean I've ever said about LA. This is actually it's practically suburban. It's lovely. The next day, we're walking down the exact same path, and someone had taken a duffel bag that clearly ripped off out of somebody's thing. They stuffed it full of cosmetics they'd looted from the local CVS and and snack foods and things like that. They'd ravaged through the snack foods like a rabid squirrel. The wrappers were strung everywhere. That I don't know if they kept some cosmetics, but there were other ones just strewn all over the alleyway. It was like a well, not really an alley. It's more like a walkway. The side of several buildings. Just strewn everywhere, and it was like, oh my god, okay, well now I understand why the CVSs are all empty. But yeah, so anyway, but there was probably a point here, but anyway, we eventually oh yeah, I'm sorry. So we'd gotten all this stuff. We'd done the one thing we had to do, and we thought, well, okay, let's talk to the Delta. And because they announced on their system that yes, due to the fact that everyone's flight everywhere has been canceled, delayed, and rescheduled until the end of time, we're allowing you to freely rebook with no penalties for basically the next week and a half. And we're thinking, this flight has not gone great. We did go to your reunion, but I'd be just as happy to just go the hell home right now. This is not be a low stressful way to travel. LA is up next, and I mean, LA is a fantastic city when you're feeling calm. When you're not feeling calm, it can be a bit much. But I'm thinking, do I want to go through another car rental, more LA traffic, more whatever else, or can we just go home? So you of course can't get anyone on Delta on the phone. The time for an operator is 3.5 hours at this point. So yay, we're down from 6. But at this point, we're like, okay, the only way we're ever going to get any answers is if we just go to the airport and ask them. So we go to the airport, and let's see what we're doing here. I think I have a picture of that. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is 2 days later. This is after the fiasco, and this is basically the line. It's backed up to the doors of San Diego, the terminal, and so the line to get to the front is, and again, a lovely bunch of folks. Yeah, you met the best people in line at this whole thing, and this ran for easily an hour and a half. Got a chance to have some great conversations, meet some good people. We were all in pretty good spirits, all things considered. But when we finally got to the top of the line, where they're saying, "Hey, I hear that you're allowing people to reschedule and cancel flights and and move back. Could we maybe just go home? We got our luggage with us." Our second rental car, I'll put it this way: I've never had this rental whatsoever, but it apparently, the first night I reported to the guy, I said, "Hey, your first gear, something's wrong with it. It's going, it shifts through. You want to have that looked at quickly." The next day we went to gas it up. I put a couple gallons of gas in. I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to return this thing. It's not good. And we tried to pull away from the pump, and we could not because it would not go from park to any gear that involved forward motion. So my wife and I literally had to push it to the side of the gas station, go next door, try and get some coffee in us, and then just deal with it later. Because at this point, we're just freaked. Triumphantly at the end, we did get it to shift into first gear, and at that point, I'm so scared of ever getting it out of the drive gears that I'm not willing to chance another return into park because I don't know if it will ever get out of that again. So I'm calling the guy who rented it to me. I'm saying, I think when I told you last night your first gear's gone to hell. Well, it's gone fully to hell. No, it effectively does not have a first gear anymore. It will not go into it, and nothing I can do. It seems to convince it to do this. But if I get lucky and I ever get this thing moving, I want to return it to you. Or do you want to can we just take it to a shop, tow it, pick it up? Where else is? Well, it'd be nice if you could return it to, guess where? The CVS. So anyway, so we actually managed to get the thing in gear. We drive past our Airbnb. I'm holding it with the brake, just the brake pedal at the top of the hill, because we're not going to go down the hill, which would involve reversing out to try to get back on the main road. And we're not sure what the hell's going on. So Carolyn's running back in, packing our suitcases madly, shoving in the back of the car. We drive like hell, down to the CVS in San Diego to give this guy his car back. And the only time we switched off was literally right in front of his guy to take return on the car. But anyway, so we're back here, and we were just trying to just end the trip. I just want to go home. I'm done. I don't care. I'll pay for all the cancellations. I'll write off all the Airbnbs. I'll say goodbye to my Comic-Con tickets. Whatever. I just want to go home. We get to the front of this line after 3 hours, and the guy looks at us like we're punking him. Like, but wait, you have tickets to go home. I say, yeah, but they're from like 5 days from now. We want to just end this now. He says, you see all these people behind you? They're all waiting for tickets to try to get to their next place. You already have tickets that get you there. I'm booking people through next Thursday right now. That's the first flight that I've got any availability on to move anyone for. Your tickets will put you back on Saturday. So why are you wasting my time is basically what he told us. And so we were kind of like, okay, thank you for your time. Moped out of there, said goodbye to our new friends who were off trying to get to their next place, hopped in a Lyft, and tried to find ourselves yet another car to get to LA. And then we went on, and we actually, had actually not a bad time the rest of the trip. But anyway, so we eventually got to Comic-Con, and Comic-Con is it's as crazy as you think. This is, so the thing people don't know when they talk about Comic-Con is, people will talk about Comic-Con. Whoops, let me get that back here. People will talk about Comic-Con as if it's just like a show. It's not a show. It's the thing that drives me craziest is when people like in a local market like Cincinnati or Nashville will say, "Oh yeah, we're having Comic-Con here." No, you're having a Comic-Con here. You're not having Comic-Con here. I mean, Comic-Con is in San Diego. It involves 150,000 attendees, probably another 100 or 150,000 people who are just hanging around who weren't attendees, who just overflow the entire area. Vendors, merchants. It uses every hotel within about a 30-mile radius. It's Comic-Con. Capitals everywhere. It is not a small show by any stretch of the imagination. It hasn't been for ages. Back in the 90s, you used to be able to actually, the first time I went to Comic-Con, I literally could, get dropped off right in front of the convention center. Someone would say, yeah, I'll come back, pick you up at 5. And just, go in, buy a badge for like, I think it was like $25, walk in, see the stuff, buy a bunch of comic books, walk out at the end with like a long box of comic books under my hands. It was great. That is not the show we got anymore. It's been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When the San Diego Convention Center built out, it built with it. It occupied every square a centimeter there is, and then it started overflowing into the city itself. Especially when Hollywood in the 90s figured out that comics are a great place to find new properties for movies and such, Comic-Con just completely overflowed its banks. And the thing that's a little bit sad is that it's no longer a great place to buy comic books or actually do comic booky things really in general, because so much of the show is really taken up by other pop culture stuff. It's every new TV and movie thing that's going to hit any kind of youthful, being essentially anyone under the age of maybe 60 audience is going to go there. Everyone who is selling any kind of toy, any kind of pop culture property whatsoever, all the new TV series from Netflix, Hulu, just and so forth, they're all massive operations out there. You've got IMDb rents a yacht out back just to talk about IMDb-ness. It's insane how big the whole thing is. But one of the things that will drive you absolutely nuts if you ever do go to Comic-Con, and if you do go to Comic-Con, it's probably at this point, I think the tickets are like $400 each. If you can get them, you have to enter a lottery system to even get into them. The hotels are hundreds of bucks a night, and that's also done on a lottery basis. The best thing you can do if you want to be assured of a place is convince yourself that having a car rental and driving 20 miles out to your hotel or your Airbnb in the middle of some outlying suburb is a perfectly good way to escape the stress of the con. It's the best practical thing. It's the best mental attitude thing, way to go. And then you might be able to actually get a place for only 150 a night. But yeah, no, it's an expensive place to be, which is why after 20 some years of doing it as a company, which for us it was a 5-figure outlay for decades, and it got to be a steeper and steeper outlay. We eventually got to the point where it doesn't make sense for us anymore. So we stopped exhibiting at the show. I still go as a professional whenever I can, because it's an incredible thing. And it is one of these once a year things to actually go and bump into people that you haven't seen for a long time, and and meet up with people who like y'all and so forth. So I mean, there is nothing like it. But yeah, it's if you have a Comic-Con, this is not the Comic-Con. Maddeningly, I have a relative who, right as we're bouncing out of the show on the second day, he says, "Oh yeah, hey, I is messaging my wife. It's like, there's some exclusive that I hear you can get over at one of the booths, and could you get one for me?" And it's like, oh, sweet baby Jesus, you have no idea what an ask that is. It's because you're not asking me not only to drive, park a mile away, walk into the show, wade through a massive humanity that goes on forever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're not only asking me to do that, but you're probably also asking me to get into another line to get the ticket to wait in the line for the exclusive, which probably sold out 2 days ago, which, as it turns out, is exactly what happened. But yeah, no, do not ask your friends to go get you that thingy that you heard from on the interwebs about that they've got a cool thing at Comic-Con. If they happen to bring you something back because they happen to be walking by at the exact right microsecond to grab the special thing for you, just say thank you. But for God's sake, I mean, asking someone to pick up a particular exclusive at Comic-Con it's like the same level of ask as like saying, "Hey, I got to move my 5-bedroom house." It's like this is like the thing that breaks up friendships, that stresses everything. It tells you who would die next to you in a foxhole is someone who would say yes to this. Yeah, the funny thing is the people out in the outside world just reading about the stuff on the internet. So, it's like a big store. You just kind of walk past, the magic booth, put out your credit card, and they hand you the thing, right? No, they don't. It's not like that at all. So anyway, and you guys who've been there, exactly what I'm talking about. Let me check the chat here for a second. Richard says, my SDCC horror story is worse than his. At some point, I got to hear yours. We got to do a ComicBase After Dark on this one. Let's see here. Lots of testing stuff like that. Is it worse than Eric Reynolds' SDCC horror story? He won an Eisner but couldn't accept it in person, but was apparently stuck in his hotel room because of COVID. Oh, that sucks. It's funny. I did run into Brian Talbot, which again, this is one of the great things about Comic-Con is you can, yes, you will die trying to find the exclusive, Cersei Lannister Funko Pop. I mean, that thing people will be like shedding blood over, but you can walk up to people like Brian Talbot, the Eisner Award-winning artist, Tale One Bad Rat, and many, many other wonderful things. Amazing English guy, and he's just kind of sitting there by himself. It's like, Brian, I haven't seen you since UCAC. It's great to see you. Tell me about how things are. He's like, well, I've got this, and he shows you the Eisner they just gave him the night before. It's like, wow. I mean, that's fantastic stuff. So anyway, getting off the topic. So let's see. Hail to the chat. Let's see. Department of Comics says, yeah, electric cars nowhere near able to replace internal combustion yet. Yeah. I guess I'm open to the idea that like your particular use case, is what they call it in software, may be ideally suited for an electric car. I mean, like, again, think about it that, I have got a house. I've got solar panels on the roof. I've got a charging station set up. I can plug the thing in every night and it's ready to go. I'm going to drive a maximum of 50 miles to my work. I'm going to drive a maximum of 50 miles home. I'm going to do limited errands before I'm going to then plug it in for the night and lather, rinse, repeat next day. I never go on road trips. I never haul big things. I never do any of the things that we do with, bigger cars or trucks and things like that. If that's you, then, knock yourself out. But, I mean, there's people on my block who have golf carts for the same reason. It's hard for me to think of a world where this is everyone's primary car is an electric. I mean, and it's funny because I think the point got made by somebody is that when we say an electric vehicle, we're not really meaning an electric vehicle. What we're really meaning is a battery operated vehicle, because it's not like there's a cord that keeps the power running. No, it's battery operated, and so you're limited by everything that is battery, which I at this point, given the current technology, unless something very, very different happens about the way that we can store energy, we'd have to intuit a technological leap that just is not there. But until you got that, just the idea that to charge your car is you basically have to wait. You have to think that an hour to find a charger, wait for the guy in front of me to get done, and then charge it myself. An hour to do that's normal. I mean, when you start talking about that is like as a rental thing, for God's sake, that is never going to happen. Nobody wants this. And like I say, if you want to read like the full stories of how I went from like, actually kind of I'm a techie guy, but I was kind of like, kind of optimistic, and, I'm very disposed towards the Mustang brand. Obviously, I'm very disposed towards like the acceleration of electrics, and I'm kind of geeky and I like the geeky stuff. I went from like, hey, this could be cool, to, in 20 hours flat. I mean, I'm literally like burn it with fire, So anyway, all right. So let's see here. Yeah. Budget wants money just to speak to a person. Are you still able to buy comics at Comic-Con? Yes, I was. And let me show you some of the good stuff, because I've been ranting on a fair amount, just a touch. Let's see if my headphones reach back far enough to grab some of my stuff. Nope, they don't. So I'm going to do this. So some of the cool stuff I managed to grab at Comic-Con. And the funny thing is I got all this walking in on preview night. I think I got one other thing later on. Took no effort at all. Just literally just walk straight up to people. It's like, oh, hi, it's great to see you again. And how's the wife, how's the family? And yes, you need to sell me your next thing. Which, by the way, if you're going to Comic-Con, open your damn wallet. You are going to be bled dry to go there, for every damn thing you do. I mean, it's probably a minimum of $1,500 really to see the show. That's probably the cheapest it can be done. And that's, again, that's, Airbnb-ing it and cheap rentals and everything else. I mean, you're gonna spend big bucks to just see the show. And then every lunch you have, I mean, like, if it's just like, every beer is going to be $10 or up. I assume you tip your waitress, so I mean, the fact that it was $9, yes, you tipped your waitress. Every lunch you have that is, not In-N-Out, which, by the way, In-N-Out, yes, that is the best thing that happened to everything. But if you're sitting down at all, just even grabbing like a burger, like burgers at every bar or whatever else, R20 and up, and so forth. And yes, they jack the prices for the show. Yes, they do. Are they that much lower in the off season? Not in California, they're not. Gas was running. I saw it as high as, God, I took it at one point. I think that it was as high as, I think, 529 around Beverly Hills, just right off of the Hollywood Boulevard. I think I filled up as low as 459. I think is as low as it went. When I was in Huntsville, Alabama, the week before, it was really big news when it was as high as, I think I paid 303. But the funny thing is, gas was not where I really bled out. The funny thing is, the charging up the electric was actually more expensive than filling up the rental to get an equivalent number of miles. That was just insane. But no, it's the food, the lodging were absolutely psychotic. So when you get to the show floor and someone's saying, "Hey, I want to sell you a comic book and it's $10," pay him the $10. I mean, don't argue about the price. Say, well, maybe if it was like 2 for 10. No, just pay him the 10. That guy is bleeding out just like you are to go to the show. So when he offers you something, if it makes any sense at all, just say yes. Anyway, but cool things I got at the show. Met Mr. Eric Joyner, which you'll recognize from the pictures right behind me. He does very cool, whimsical robot art. He was at the show. He had his brand new book, brilliant stuff, and picked that one up. And he was very kind enough to sign, and I believe just sketching that one as well for me. But Robot Existentialism, he has a new volume out there. Jacqueline Jones, met the artist on preview night. Indie comic about policewomen and so forth. It's by Carrick Esquivel. Decent art. I mean, it's funny because he was having trouble getting his Indiegogo running, but as I told him, it's like, man, we see a lot of art, and yours is better than most. So I'm looking forward to checking that one out. Some great painting guys. Oh yes, Get It Together Pickles from the great Dave Kellett. He does a strip called Sheldon, and again, he was kind enough to draw me a lovely sketch in this one. This is a collection of his latest cartoons and so forth. If you don't know his stuff, if you just like having like just something that is nice in your day, sheldoncomics.com. Check it out. He puts out a daily strip, and it's funny, it's hip, it's kind of geeky, and it's just beautifully done. He is kind of very much in the same school as Calvin and Hobbes in terms of how he does cartooning and so forth. Very talented guy. Pretty much anything he does worth checking out. Dave McKean, huge fan, was at the show, and again, it was a guy that was like, I could just walk up to his booth, no one else around, and we could just chat and talk about art and how, our side business. Like, I used to play music much more before ComicBase came in and kind of occupied every minute of my life. But he's still playing in 2 different bands as well as drawing just amazing art. And he was also very, very kind, and not only sold me a copy of his book, but also did me quite a nice sketch on the inside of it all. Comic Book Legal Defense booth was out there. Got loads of stuff from Fleetway. Fleetway is now owned by a company called Rebellion out of Britain. So all the Judge Dredd, all the British stuff out there, they were terrific guys out there. They're actually, if you are going to Comic-Con, they're one of the secret cool things at the booth, because not only do they tend to have a lot of really nice giveaways and showing off lots of really cool collections and things like that, but they're also one of the few guys there who will give you that most elusive of all con things, a poster tube. So because if you got any other poster thing like that, you guys all know that they will be just blown up beyond repair by, even before you get them to the luggage monkeys at Delta. Anything at all fragile like that will be destroyed utterly unless they're inside a hard side tube. And so those poster tubes are worth their weight in gold. By the way, since I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's see here. A budget what Carnival wants money to speak to a person. I'll bet they do. By the way, when I was looking at a night at the Minneapolis St. Paul airport, and I was thinking, what if we don't get a rental car? What if we just get the cheapest conceivable hotel we could take a lift to in San Diego? Motel Sixes were going for $500 a night. The date of the CrowdStrike fiasco. Red Roof's Inns were like 400 and some, but even like there was like a Motel 6 that was like 20 miles away out, like in Escondido or something like that. It was still like 300 and change. Absolutely, what a crazed night. Anyway, Department of says they need to change the name to Pop Culture Con. Yeah, if truth in advertising has anything to do with it, but it's yeah, what do you got to say? I mean, you've got a century or 50 years of branding on the thing, which is Comic-Con. So, let's see here. So PSAs, by the way, let's not forget about those. The CrowdStrike yes, cannot stop the CB live stream. Don't forget hitting the like and subscribe if you're into this sort of thing at all, because God knows what the next one will do. Anyway, ComicBase message boards are up at forums.comicbase.com, and they did not go down during CrowdStrike. We do have a dedicated thread on the ComicBase message boards where you can request live stream topics and so forth. And we also have live stream episodes of note. Interesting. I've got to check that one out myself. And in the torrent area, there's a link to Andre's amazing world-famous ComicBase cover catalog, which is, I think we're up to 1,058,059,000 cover images now. Imagine that printed out. It's psychotic, but definitely worth doing. Let me show you a couple of things from Comic-Con before we get too doomed out of the whole thing. So this is just a couple shots of the world outside the show floor. So as you can see what they're doing here, and this is just from the entrance of midway through the convention center, looking down across the rail tracks towards things. They decorate out all the buildings. It turns out, decorating a hotel, the side of a hotel, is actually some of the cheaper ways to do big advertising during Comic-Con. Everything is crazy expensive. Here's some more. Just looks down at the gas lamp district. You can see that I think it's FX is showing off the new interview with the Vampire series and so forth, and they've dressed out everything there. A lot of times they will have they call them activations, but basically bits of the con that people have done outside of the con, because you can't get onto the show floor anymore. You don't fit. And so down here in the gas lamp, there was a thing for, I think it's called For Those About to Die. It's a new series where they were doing chariot racing. It's kind of like miniature scale chariot racing. We saw a number of absolutely crazy things. Let me see if I can get my media deck to cooperate. I have some video of different things we saw on the gas lamp, and come on, you can do it. Let's see, media players. Come on. I'm gonna try to scrub through. Nope, the hyperdeck is just not playing. Anyway, nope. Our video playback is dead for the day. Sorry about that, guys. That's just par for the course around here. But some of the things that I would love to show you a video of, which I may get around to in a future episode, right in that part where the gas lamp district starts, right off of, I think it's 5th Street. So you're crossing over from the convention center into the greater San Diego area right at that point. You see all the people walking across. Right at that point, you saw, because it's such a confluence of just humanity at that point, you see a lot of just crazy stuff. For a lot of years, there was everything from like crazed, Baptist ministers, the Hillsborough Baptist Church, which, I'm going to say anyone who's actually Baptist probably wants nothing to do with them, because it's like, it's like the way that, like, the Democratic, People's Republic of North Korea is not actually very democratic. I'm going to say probably something similar applies to the horrific bunch of people that were the Westboro Baptist Church. It's like one guy and his 7 crazed followers who would then go out and just call every woman they saw a slut and a whore. And it was just, they were terrible people, but they were out there for a number of years. That was fun. This year there was one guy who was a little nicer. He had a megaphone going, but more importantly, they had lots and lots of cool things going on. I had a great video of a Minion marching band. It was just, it's guys dressed up as Minions which for no apparent reason whatsoever were just rocking out all over the Gaslamp district. That was amazingly cool. There was one thing that's kind of weird is apparently there was a illegal biolab found out in Fresno a couple years ago during around COVID, right around the time when we got other gifts from China. And they apparently the Chinese owners of an illegal biolab, which then went media silent about the whole thing. And apparently somebody went out and not only published a comic book about the whole thing, which is available online, which I'll try to dig up a link for, but they had like massive presence of people dressed up promoting this this. I guess it was kind of a loose protest against both the biolab and the fact that no one seemed to be paying any attention. Honestly, I didn't get too close because it was weird, and I had enough weird in my life, so I try to dial back. But I did read I read a news account afterwards that says they were also handing out comic books, and then I felt a little bad because I would have normally gotten a comic book just for ComicBase. But apparently it's available online. That's a thing that happened. All sorts of people dressed up in cool costumes. I'm going to say not as much as in years past in terms of like how elaborate they were. One guy dressed up as a sentinel did not think it through very well because his costume was like 25 feet tall and he could not actually get it through the doorways into the convention center, and so it was kind of stranded outside. I mean, it must have looked great on the street, but yeah, it did not make quite the statement inside the hall that he might have dreamed. I did see there's a great video I've got, which I do hope to show, of a woman dressed up as a Spider-Man T-Rex, a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You know, she's pushing her cart with her kid in it down the hall, you know, T-Rex head bobbing in the whole thing, and people constantly stepping on her inflated tail. It was just a mad, crazy scene, and actually kind of wonderful. But anyway, so we got through it. We actually survived. I don't know how, and that all happened. So other tech news and comic-based news I did want to get to before we left. So obviously we did a big not at Comic-Con sale during Comic-Con, and for everyone who renewed or upgraded during the show, I do want to say thank you very much. And thank you to all the staff back here who, while I'm going crazy out in San Diego, managed to keep the whole place running. So thank you guys. This is such a group effort. I cannot tell you how much I thank all of you guys. And of course, you guys, you know, your support is what keeps this kind of insanity in business. I mean, this is, I think, I think it's about my 30th Comic-Con I've gone to, and I cannot believe that I make a living in this insane business. So thank you all for that and for making that happen. For the people who bought during the show, one of the things that we promised you, because we were actually able to set a date for it, is that you are going to be getting a copy of ComicBase 2025, and that is currently scheduled for August 20th. So yes, a little bit over 3 weeks from now, we should be shipping the next major version of ComicBase. For everyone who's been on the insider track, it's codenamed Magic Castle. This is they all got to see the first drop of the new art on this one, which you actually there's even a setting inside the program under the if you go to the file menu, go to themes, you can toggle it between the sketch version and the painted version of the cover, which is pretty cool. But anyway, yes. So the new version is going to be dropping in about 3 weeks, unless something unexpected happens. Yeah, because it's not like, you know, anything unexpected's happened in the world in the last month or so. But anyway. So that's going, we're scheduled for the 20th. We feel pretty good about it at the moment, but at this point, I try not to get too much weight on any particular plan, but that is the date we have announced. But as you guys all know, when you subscribe to ComicBase, you know, the copies, you know, when you buy a copy of ComicBase, it comes with a year of free updates, and the updates do cover prices, they cover new program updates and new content for a year, at which point our devilish QAnon plan is to get you to be convinced that it was so useful to you that you would never think of ever not renewing, and then we try to sell you the renewal at a discounted rate. So and then hopefully that keeps you in the family, and we keep on pushing updates, and we keep on being able to do crazy things like we do all year. So thank you all of you who have supported us, and we're looking forward to that. Last thing I did want to talk about briefly, because in the middle of all the CrowdStrike and the Azure downs and things like that, there is one other emergent bit of tech news which I do think bears note. And again, at this point, between trying to assassinate presidents and everything else that's been going on, this is not one of your larger threat vectors in life, but it is worth noting, is that people have apparently in, I think it's called Binnerly, just released a technical paper. They've figured out a way to blow through the secure boot process on a great many motherboards that are out there in the world, including several, I think it's a couple hundred from Gigabyte, which I'm going to say we have quite a few of in our business here, because they make very good, nice motherboards. But apparently one of the things that they did not do very well, and a lot of people didn't do very well, is when they were testing secure boot. And secure boot is a feature to make sure that no one, and they have to have exploited your computer by other means, but if they've done that, they can't install the most dreaded of all hacks, which is a UEFI virus. So UEFI is the Universal Extensible Firmware Interface. Don't you know? But it's the stuff that's booting during those few couple seconds when your machine is powering up and it's saying press F2 to go into the BIOS and stuff like that. The UEFI is the program that's running right then. So before you've even launched the operating system. And one of the main reasons that Windows 11 was going all in on their trusted platform modules and their secure boot and everything else about that was the idea that you've got to protect the UEFI from ever being compromised by code that gets executed before the operating system. Because if it gets in there, there's no getting rid of it without like a firmware flash. I mean, at that point, you may as well throw the computer away, because you could reinstall Windows and it would not get rid of the bad that you could put in at UEFI. If someone gets in there and it's been done, it's super bad for your computing life. Anyway, so that was a big reason why. Like if you ever had an old computer that says, well, I'm sorry, we can't use you with Windows 11. Your computer doesn't have the things we need. They were looking for certain hardware components. One of them is called Trusted Platform Module, which would ensure that they could cryptographically ensure that everything that's running at at the very boot time, before the operating system even gets involved, was secure and signed off by it's under control of Microsoft, and nothing malicious could ever get in there. Except apparently there's a great number of people who were using testing crypto signing keys, which were actually marked as for testing only, do not use. But apparently they got used by the writers of a lot of UEFI firmware out there, including, in my life, Gigabyte in particular, but loads of others, Dell, HP, you name it. A lot of people got tagged in this one. And if your machine gets compromised otherwise, so in other words, it is possible to get another kind of virus that has machine control, which then executes something which overwrites part of your UEFI process, which then gives you like the forever virus. Anyway, this is obviously something. It hasn't been it hasn't been like a CrowdStrike-y, like it's taken out the world kind of thing, but it's a real vulnerability. So do look, check out who does your the motherboard on your computers, and look for a firmware update. This is one of those few times when you actually want to see, is there a firmware update from my motherboard? And if so, very much consider installing it, because typically you wouldn't mess with your computer's firmware unless there was like a really bad, like it didn't support your RAM or something like that, like a hardware problem. This is actually one of those, the only times I've ever heard of where there's a software vulnerability that's out there that it's definitely worth hunting for a patch and fishing around for it. So have a look. There's a list of affected motherboards out on the net. I'll try to link it in the show notes when I get a moment, along with all the other things I promised you I'm going to try to link. But in the meantime, do Google UEFI exploit. See if your motherboard is one that's affected, and if so, look for a firmware update from this one. Because as long as you update ahead of it, it's not a big deal, no problem, no harm, no foul. But again, if you did ever get tagged with something like this, it is, again, it's about the only thing I could think of where literally erasing your hard drive wouldn't make it better. So anyway, what a week. All right, with all that said, let's see here. Let's see, still unable to get the app to align with the database. Department of Comics, let's please contact us offline. We'll see if we can't help you out on whatever that issue is, and we'll get to the end of that one. All right, guys. Well, that's about it from me. I'm going to sign off for now, and hopefully everything will be working next week, and it'll be a much more relaxed time. I'll be out the office ziplining tomorrow with my wife's birthday. But after that, just back at the job, and hopefully I'm not getting on an airplane for a long, long time. All right, guys, you take care, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.